My presentation title is Eco-Colonialism, or Redemption and Innovation. I stand with many Canadians and poorer communities who want responsible economic development and a financial stake in the delivery and use of energy, including fossil fuels. Firstly, I define eco-colonialism and eco-racism from the perspective of a growing number of Indigenous Canadians. I am aware of the concerns many of you have with fossil fuels. However, I urge you to consider the need for poorer nations to rely on fossil fuel while we all strive to get to negative zero greenhouse gas emissions. Serving that end, I lift up innovative companies who redeem fossil fuel and greenhouse gas emissions to offer hope and reconciliation to our post-colonial world. Eco-colonialism is a term used by many First Nations people in Canada to describe how they perceive many activists as trying to control their Indigenous land with divide and conquer tactics. A growing number of First Nations in Canada want responsible economic development in their territories. For many, this includes the development and delivery of liquid natural gas and oil. Eco-racism is not new in Canada. Many First Nations want to put an end to eco-racism. So do I. I don't even like the term. I think calling someone an eco-racist or an eco-colonialist prevents conversation and meaningful discussion. But hey, sometimes calling someone a name can start an argument, and an argument can often clear the air. In British Columbia 160 years ago, the gold rush brought a flood of immigrants to BC. Eco-racism became evident with the collapse of the gold rush. The colonial government took control of the Indigenous communities struggling to feed and sustain themselves economically and politically. In order to give land and a hand up to immigrants and their dreams for a better life, the government stopped making treaties with the Indigenous populations and cut their existing land reserves in size. On reserves, First Nations people were made wards, dependents of the government. As wards, they were treated like little children. They had no say in the government. They could not vote, sell their property, or develop and sell their resources. According to many First Nations, colonial attitudes still exist today. They claim activists are condemning First Nations and other people in Canada who want to develop Canada's oil and natural gas. They say activists are lifting up First Nations people as wise stewards of the land only to protect them and save the environment from business interests from the fossil fuel industry. Many First Nations are calling foul. They claim this is eco-colonialism and they want it to end. First Nations people want self-determination. A coalition of First Nations defining themselves as Project Reconciliation want clean drinking water, clean air, and a well-managed environment. That is why they and other like-minded First Nations want a stake in business interests associated with fossil fuel. They too see themselves as wise stewards of the land who want to own things. Liana Wolflag and a growing number of First Nations believe there is an oil pipeline to reconciliation. Please listen to what Liana has to say.
My name's Liana Wolflag. My Blackfoot name is Gadaitsa Nabaki, and I am from Treaty 7, centered in the Siksika Nation. This place is meaningful to me because this is my home. This has always been my home, and it always will be. This is the area where the treaty was signed, and it's a place where many futures changed. And now I believe that in this area, maybe I can bring about some change to the next future. Within my Indigenous community, not only with mine, but with others, I want economic stability. I want people to be able to have a say, to have governance and sovereignty, which they haven't been able to have in so long. Indigenous ownership of the Trans Mountain Pipeline would open so many doors for every Indigenous person who would be involved in it. They'd be able to own things. They'd be able to provide economic stability for places like this. They would actually be able to get things done rather than leaving them undone. We've left things to be let go for so long. It's time for a change.
Many Christians have caught colonial values. Many judge people with business minds as being unfaithful stewards. They think of them as greedy, full of lust, unable to follow the good teacher because they lack a faithful heart. Believe it or not, many Christians and environmentalists see the First Nations' desire to own 51% of the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline extension from Alberta to British Columbia, as a sellout. They think Liana Wolflag and others have been led astray by the lust for gold and the desire to own things. Many activists want to keep the oil in the soil and stop the development of fossil fuels. In the rush to go green, elite city dwellers think charging plastic cell phones, cars, and planes with electricity sounds like a green idea. What many don't realize is that the demand for electricity and plastic all over the world has increased. They just don't realize that plastic is made from oil, and 40% of the world's electricity is produced by coal, and 35% by natural gas. So, other environmentalists are saying people need to rethink. What would life look like in the dark? Please take a moment to listen to this video produced by Canadians for Canada's Future.
Over the past decade, everyone from foreign-funded protesters to homegrown activists have attempted to landlock our resources. While we've been busy reducing GHG emissions and maintaining the highest environmental and human rights standards for energy development in the world. We're working hard to keep this country running and Canadians in jobs, even as our critics do everything in their power to keep our resources locked away. Today we say, enough is enough. For too long we've been taken for granted by all too many people who vigorously condemn what we do, while relishing in the fruits of our labor every day of their lives. We're tired of our natural resources being sold to American customers at bargain prices. And it sickens us to see our strong and free nation buying oil from countries that violate every value Canadians hold dear. It's time for us to tell our story, a story we can all be proud of, a story that positively impacts millions of lives across our beautiful country. The truth. Global energy needs are increasing every year. The world needs Canadian energy. It needs the most responsibly sourced and safely delivered energy in the world. It drives our economy as much as it drives your car. We create jobs and build schools, playgrounds, and hospitals. We support communities, charities, and families. We fuel the arts, technology, renewables, and virtually every other industry. We are here to stay. We will continue to employ millions, feed families, fund infrastructure, pay doctors and teachers, and fill restaurants, movie theaters, and hotels. Canada needs us. The world needs us. We are Canadian Energy, and we are proud.
Alex Epstein is an American who loves fossil fuels. He's a philosopher, an energy theorist, and a moralist. He has published a book called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. In his book, he points out how fossil fuels have given people all over the world better health and a higher standard of living. Many environmentalists dismiss him and have ridiculed him as a climate change denier. They are not even interested in listening to his thinking. Greenpeace and leading experts claim fossil fuels are no longer necessary. They insist our dependency is an addiction that has caused the present climate crisis and is dooming us to imminent catastrophe. These experts insist we stop using fossil fuel immediately and replace them with renewables. Alex Epstein reminds his readers these same experts told us this 30 years ago. We're still here. Epstein does have a point. Despite the predictions and dire warnings of scientists, electricity demand has gone up. Renewables have not kept pace. People around the world have nearly doubled their dependency on fossil fuels. The rising middle class in China have abandoned their bicycles and bought cars. China's growing middle class needs coal. Researchers from Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences have developed a paper in collaboration with other institutions in China, Australia, and the US. They have found a way that allows China to move towards negative carbon power in an economically competitive way with bioenergy. Bioenergy, the process of converting biomass into energy and then capturing and storing carbon, up until now was not very efficient or cost effective. However, China and researchers from Australia and the US have turned to coal, an unlikely solution to make carbon capture cost effective and efficient. China's strategy uses biomass from agricultural waste and combines it with coal, marries it with coal. Gasifying the mixture, they develop pure hydrogen and liquefy the capture of CO2. This process eliminates CO2 emissions from burning coal and agricultural slash burning after every harvest. The liquid CO2 is thereby captured and can be stored permanently underground or used. Can we use CO2? Carbon Engineering is a Canadian company that is doing just that. According to CEO Steve Oldham, direct air capture enables the production of synthetic transportation fuels such as gasoline, diesel, or Jet A, using only atmospheric CO2 and hydrogen split from water, powered by clean electricity. It recycles the CO2 already in the atmosphere and displaces crude oil. More importantly, It is drop-in compatible with any vehicle on the road today. There is no need to spend $40,000 to $50,000 on an electric car. This fuel provides marine and air travel with an affordable, carbon-neutral alternative. Direct air capture facilities can be built to capture 1 million tons of CO2 per year each, which is equivalent to the annual emissions of 250,000 average cars. Storing half that amount captured by each facility would bring air fuel transportation to negative zero emissions. Direct air capture is not an easy process. To capture and store carbon costs money, and nobody wants to pay for it. People are asking, wouldn't it be better to stop putting CO2 into the air in the first place? Well, the problem is, despite our best efforts, we're not doing that. Carbon engineering's air-to-fuel is one way to do that because carbon engineering makes money selling their synthetic fuel to pay for carbon storage. Carbon Upcycling Technologies is an award-winning startup company based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Carbon Upcycling Technologies and their CEO, Apoorv Sinha, believe the carbon age is imminent. Unlike the Bronze and Iron Ages, Carbon Upcycling Technologies and Apoorv Sinha think of CO2 as an abundant, renewable resource. In their vision, CO2 is not a liability. The company was founded with the goal of making CO2 green, both environmentally and financially sustainable. Carbon Upcycling Technologies combine CO2 and fly ash to make additives to reduce the amount of cement used in concrete. Cement manufacturing accounts for about 8% of the world's CO2 emissions, whereas aviation accounts for only 2.5%. In addition, Carbon Upcycling Technologies make carbon nanoparticles that can be used in plastic, coatings, solar panels, and lithium batteries. Surprisingly, these carbon nanoparticles already play a significant role in pharmaceutical drug delivery and cancer treatments. Clean O2 is another Canadian company working to reduce greenhouse gases. According to Jason Cardiff, the CEO and co-founder, they have developed a black box the size of a household furnace that they call Carbonix. Carbonix is the world's first aggregate commercial carbon capture device. It works to reduce energy demands through heat recovery and carbon capture to produce a valuable byproduct that Clean O2 turns into soap. Commercial Carbonix devices can be installed in homes and apartment buildings using natural gas for hot water and heat. These devices suck CO2 into a chamber. The CO2 then mixes with potassium hydroxide and causes a chemical reaction that produces heat. The heat generated is used to warm the hot water tanks in the boiler room. The potassium carbonate, a fine dry white powder, is filtered out and collected every 10 days or so, similar in scope to a water bottle delivery service. Over the course of a year, 4 to 6 tons of this powder can be collected from each apartment or commercial building to make Clean O2 soap. When I contacted Jason Cardiff to confirm this amount, he said while 4 to 6 tons of potash combined with an additional 4 tons of carbon offset through heat recovery may seem insignificant for one unit, tens of tens of thousands of units in operation would significantly reduce Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. Roughly 20% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions come from hot showers and staying warm in winter. Mark Harema, the CEO of New Light Technologies based in California in the United States, sees his company as being part of a new paradigm shift of how we view carbon emissions. He says he got the idea for his company reading a newspaper article about how much methane gas cows produce from burps. Mark and his company have found a way to make biodegradable plastics from methane from cows who burp.
Plastics. They are everywhere and used to make just about everything. It's a $370 billion a year industry, dependent upon oil companies to mass produce its product.
I don't think a lot of people are aware that actually their plastic is made with oil right now.
When you're drinking a water bottle, what most people don't realize, you're literally holding solid oil or solid fossil fuels in your hands.
Mark started New Light Technologies in 2003 with the goal to revolutionize the business by taking the carbon you emit and turning it into plastic.
This concept started with a newspaper article about how much methane cows produce from burps. The big light bulb moment there was, wow, there's so much carbon going into the air. And we're talking about taxing it or putting it underground. Why not look at it as a resource?
So you're basically taking pollution and producing plastic.
Exactly. What we've developed is a technology that takes concentrated greenhouse gas emissions, methane-based emissions, we combine them with air and turn that into a plastic that can replace plastics made from oil.
Walk me through how you turn greenhouse gases actually into plastic. What is your process here?
The methane and the air go inside of here, and as they pass by the biocatalyst, it's essentially pulling out the carbon, the oxygen, and the hydrogen.
That strand right there, that's a strand of plastic.
That's a strand of air carbon plastic. The reason why we're the first to kind of have this sort of plastic out on the market is because it was never cost effective. And the problem is, in the plastics market, it's a 660 billion pound per year market. So if you add pennies to that cost, companies simply can't afford it.
It took Mark 10 years to break that cost barrier, and now he's working with over 60 Fortune 500 companies, making everything from cell phone cases to bottle caps.
What you're describing almost seems too good to be true. Who stands to lose here?
People who stand to lose, frankly, are oil-based companies.
Exxon has 75,000 workers. You have 15.
The way that you scale is by having a superior product. I hope that 11 years from now, air carbon is being used on the commodity scale. We want to be part of a new sort of paradigm shift about how we view carbon emissions.
I hope you captured Mark Harema's enthusiasm and his hope. I like Mark's attitude and his paradigm shift. Both are redemptive and innovative. He looks at something everyone thinks of as smelly bad, methane gas from cow burps, and he sees the potential for good. He takes methane gas out of the air and transforms it into useful products everyone wants and needs. We need to find ways to collect and recycle plastic, and we need to reduce our need for fossil fuel. Plastic made from greenhouse gases takes a lot of methane out of the air and eliminates a lot of oil-based products from entering the marketplace. The vision of Apoorv Sinha and Mark Harema and their companies are similar. Apoorv and Mark don't see CO2 and methane gases as bad. Like Alex Epstein, they recognize how people need the things that fossil fuel has given them. like plastic chairs, cell phones, and heating and cooling systems. These young men are not saying people should abandon their efforts to use renewable energy. They are merely asking that people rethink their attitudes about fossil fuel and greenhouse gas emissions. They are asking people to include carbon capture and direct air capture technologies in efforts to reduce, reuse, manage, and store greenhouse gases. Eco-colonial attitudes insist humanity's hunger for gold and its addiction to fossil fuels are the primary reasons for climate change. However, one calls these attitudes. Conflicting ethics and attitudes around fossil fuels in the marketplace make it difficult for Canada's First Nations to reconcile all First Nations people with all Canadians. Many Canadians are working and supporting the fossil fuel industry. They are striving to do so responsibly while supporting renewables and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mark Harema, Apoorv Sinha, Jason Cardiff, Steve Oldham, and Liana Wolfleg's commitment to bringing something good out of fossil fuel fills my heart and mind with hope. They have one thing in common. They have redemptive and innovative attitudes that fill love tanks, fuel people's hearts. The man who has won my heart and fills my love tank the best is sitting right over there. That's Don Stewart. He says, "Love makes the world go round. Jump on." That is so true. Hope, heart talk, and enthusiasm is catching. Thank you for your attention.